the plant maximizes the number because of undergoing sexual reproduction. Of course, it undergoes asexual reproduction as well, but sexual reproduction makes the plant to reproduce very faster because it is temperature independent. Now, in this chapter, under the first subheading, fascinating organ of angiosperm, we are going to discuss the male and female reproductive system. Understand sharply and have a proper examination. The multiple terminology in CBSE, they used to say, instead of pistil, they will say carpel. Instead of saying the word, the style, stigma, ovary, ovule, instead of saying pistil, they will say carpel, or else they will say the word gynoecium. So either they will say gynoecium, or either they will say pistil, or either they will say carpel. The word is used for pistil. This pistil is having stigma to collect the pollen grain from the male reproductive system, which is having the anther to deliver the pollen grain. Pollen grain of anther is going to get attached to the stigma for doing the pollination process, where the male gamete is delivered from the pollen grain to the style, stigma, and then to the ovary. Inside the ovary, the moment when the male gamete reaches, it fuses with the female gamete to make the zygote. Zygote, you know very well, it is a outcome of fertilization. Male gamete and female gamete after fusion inside the ovary, it makes zygote, right? So now the multiple terminology remembrance is very, very important. I told instead of pistil, we will use the word carpel. Instead of carpel, we will say gynoecium. The andrecium is made up of stamen, which is present n in number. The stamen is having anther, having n number of pollen grain. Some plants are having one pollen grain. Some plant is having many pollen grain in anther, right? Anther and the filament is a part of stamen. The stamen is present in andrecium, or else in some context they used to say the andrecium is also called a stamen having anther and filament, right? So now we'll be entering into the next important concept. The pollen grain is having the male gamete. Instead of saying the word male gamete, they will use the word male reproductive cell. Instead of saying the word male reproductive cell, sometimes they will say male sex cell. They won't use the same word what as given in the board, right? Instead of saying gamete, they will say reproductive cell. Instead of saying reproductive cell, they will say sex cell. We should be very, very careful in which way they are using it, right? The pollen grain consists of male gametes, and each one of the gamete is having the nucleus, right? So pollen will move from one plant to other plant only with the help of pollinators, which is doing the pollination work. That pollinators might be insect, might be an animal like bird, might be a wind, right? So this pollination facilitates the pollen grain transfer. Once the pollen grain is transferred, the fertilization is initiated to do the zygote formation. This zygote develops into embryo for making the new plant, right? So in each and every slide, your mind should work in multiple dimensions. So for example, if you're talking about this microsporangium is going to make what? Pollen grain. What do you mean about pollen grain? What is the other name of the pollen grain? We used to say the pollen grain as the microspore. So in the CBSE exam, they won't use the word pollen grain every time. Sometimes they'll say microspore. Sometimes they will say pollen grain. Sometimes they will say pollen. Everything are same, which is present inside the microsporangium, which is the part of anther. Anther is not called microsporangium. Anther has microsporangium. Microsporangium has microspore. Microspore is having the male gamete. Be very careful in understanding all the set of information. So now we should understand how the male and female reproductive system is organized. Always in the CBSE board exam, they will keep the checkpoint for us in a such a way you should not say the answer. most of the student will fail to say the nectary, the word. Nectary produces nectar is okay, but where the nectary is present in the flower, nobody knows. It is a part of the biology CBSE practical. This nectary is present in the male reproductive organ. Where exactly? Male reproductive organ, where exactly? In the filament. In the filament. So the filament, the word we already narrated for you. Once again back, I am showing the structure for you for better understanding. If you're seeing the male reproductive system, this point is called where the arrow mark I am showing with the arrow mark where I am exactly pinpointing. That particular segment is called what? Filament. Along with the filament of the stamen, who is there exactly? Nectary is present. So nectary is present where? It is present in the stamen. What it does exactly? It does the nectar production. For what for? I need to nourish the birds or the insect when it lands on the flower. At the time, I'll be nourishing those insects and birds. This bird, when it is flying from one area to other area, it does the pollination. That means the pollen transfer from one flower to other flower by movement, right? So like this, be very careful with all the terminology. Whatever we spoken, everything we given here. So other CBSE tough question, in which way it arises. See, among all the structures, this structure is not participating in the reproduction, supporting. Whereas the stamen, anther, filament, carpel, style, ori are participating in the reproduction. There is a lot of difference between the structure which is participating in the reproduction, the structure which supports the reproduction. That means in the petal, reproduction is not happening. In the sepal, reproduction is not happening. In the petiole, reproduction is not happening. In the nectar, reproduction is not happening. Whereas in the ori, reproduction happens. For that, the anther need to deliver the pollen grain. So the first box denotes the structure which is assisting the reproduction. The second box denotes it is exactly participating in the reproduction, right? So I think so all the students understood this message, right? Now we'll be going to discuss the various tough examples, whatever they given in the last year's question papers for your better understanding and how to face the tough exam, right? If we're talking about the different part of the typical flower and their function, when they are asking, we need to specify these two are the external surface of the flower. The rest are the part of the reproductive structure. The part of the reproductive structure in the sense what exactly? If you're talking about the ovule, basically, the ovule is a part of the ovary which is mainly responsible for holding the female gamete. So that once the male gamete is delivered to the ovule facilitates the fertilization process. In the case of US, in the case of UK, instead of saying Z, in India we used to say yes, whereas in US and UK they used to say Z. So we should be very careful with all those things. Okay. So fertilization, the word, we should supposed to use what? Yes, always, right? So we'll go to pollination mechanism. The pollination mechanism are of two types. One is called exactly self-pollination, another is called cross-pollination. So if you're talking about the self-pollination and cross-pollination differences, the pollination happens between the flower of the same plant or in the same flower, then it is called self-pollination. If it happens between the two different plants, then it is called what? Cross-pollination. So in the same flower, if pollination happens, self-pollination. If it happens between the two different flower, then it's called what? Cross-pollination. Are you getting my point? Flowers, we should supposed to know. And then second thing is the diagram practice is very, very important. And the third step is the various part narration is very, very important to have a number of practice, right? So now we are going to few examples which asked in many number of years, so that what we'll understand exactly what type of question is asked in the exam, right? So if you're seeing this question, right, select the option that shows the correct identity U, X, Y, Z in a developing dicot embryo, right? So though we are having a number of practice, so we can say exactly the radical, the word I can say for Z, which is going to make the root system, and then the plumule, the word we can say for shoot making structure, and suspensor, the word I can say for the X, which holds the entire embryo, and the cotyledon, the word I can say, which is going to make the plant fully nourished. Okay, so the answer is C is the correct answer. C is the correct answer, right? Can you see this? C is the correct answer. So if any one of you having any doubt, please let me know. And now we are going for second question. So what is the primary function of petal in a flower? So all the answers, of course, it is correct. To provide support, correct. To protect reproductive organ, correct. To attract pollinator, correct. To store nutrients, correct. But among all four, which is having the maximum probability? To attract the pollinator is having the maximum probability. To attract the pollinator is having the maximum probability, right? So of course, the primary function of the petal is to protect the reproductive organs, support, nutrition, everything is correct. So the maximum probability is to attract the pollinators, right? So now we are going for the next question. The first question what we discussed exactly is the board question as in 2023 March, and then whereas this question is taken from CBSE textbook, and now this question whatever we taken is from NCERT example. Which part of flower typically produces pollen? Typically produces pollen. Stamen. Stamen is the correct answer, right? So the sepal is a part of exactly any one of you can say the answer. Petal is a part of flower. Sepal is a part of flower, but still the sepal is a part of calyx. Petal is a part of corolla. That we don't want. We need only the stamen, which is holding the anther. That makes exactly the pollen grain. So who is having the anther? Stamen is having the anther. The anther is making the pollen grain. So the pollen grain of the anther is having the male gamete. So male gamete or male sex cell or male reproductive cell is a part of pollen grain. Pollen grain is a part of anther. Anther is a part of male reproductive system, andrecium, that we discussed already, right? So now, like this, we need to know the pros and cons of each and every question, right? So now we are coming for question number 4. What is the female reproductive organ of a flower is called? Exactly. So instead of saying the answer is exactly the pistil, instead of saying pistil, sometimes they'll give carpel, sometimes they will say the word gynoecium. So in the biology, the issue is for one term, so many technical terms they will use. We should be very careful. That we already told you, right? Instead of the word pistil, they will say what? Carpel. Instead of saying carpel, they will say the word gynoecium. Instead of saying the word stamen, they will say andrecium. Instead of saying the word sepal, they will say calyx. Instead of saying the word petal, they will say corolla. So we should be highly competent enough to balance everything. Sometimes they will say corolla, sometimes they will say calyx, sometimes they will say carpel, sometimes they will say andrecium, right? So multiple terms they will use to understand our learning credential, right? Now we'll be going for the next important question. That is the 5th question, where we are going to discuss the self-pollination and cross-pollination differences. If you know very well, then balancing the answer is very easy, right? So you know very well the pollen of the anther of one flower is transferred to the other flower, right? So here, though it is another flower, cross-pollination, the word you should supposed to use. So the probability of self-pollination gives less variation. Less variation. The plant shows less variation with their parents. Cross-pollination brings maximum variation with their parents. Maximum variation with their parents.